He cried in my arms the day he lost everything, and smiled in hers the day he got it all back, but acted like I never existed. We were still on the floor. The silence between us no longer felt warm. It felt like something sacred had been cracked open, and I was holding all the pieces he was too broken to pick up. That night, I made tea with the last bit of honey we had. I sat beside him, and we drank in silence, the television playing something meaningless in the background. But I memorized the way his hands trembled, the way his eyes darted like he was being chased even in stillness. He kept whispering things like, "I should have known," and "I trusted the wrong people." And each time, I answered, "You trusted me, and I'm still here." The days that followed were a test of love I didn't know I'd sign up for. He couldn't bring himself to get out of bed for nearly a week. He missed his father's funeral, said he couldn't face the family with shame in his eyes. I didn't push. I made the calls for him. I cleaned the mess. I lied to his mother when she cried on the phone, saying, "He's coping." Slowly. Truth was, he wasn't coping at all. I carried him, literally, emotionally, financially. I cut back every expense we had. I canceled subscriptions, paused student loan payments, sold the only bracelet I owned that was real gold. He didn't even notice. Not because he didn't care, but because he was drowning too deeply to look up. One night, I walked in from work to find him staring blankly at the wall again. The dishes were still dirty. The mail was still unopened. The world was moving, but he wasn't. I sat beside him and said gently, "You're allowed to feel like this. But not forever. Not if we want to survive this together." He looked at me then, really looked, and for a second, I thought I saw gratitude flicker in his eyes. He said, "I'm sorry. You deserve better than this version of me." And I replied, "I'm not here for a version of you. I'm here for you." That night, he kissed me like he meant it, held me like he remembered who we were. I thought it was the turning point. I was wrong. Over the next few months, he slowly started returning to life. I watched him pick himself up, shower again, shave, make calls, send emails. He applied for jobs, reached out to former colleagues, rejoined online communities. I helped him rewrite his resume 5 times. I used my connections to set up interviews. I even gave him my old laptop because his had finally died. He was nervous about going back into the tech world, but I pushed him. Believed in him. Always had. And then, finally, he got an offer. A startup in California wanted him for a product lead position. Decent pay. Benefits. A relocation bonus. They said they liked comeback stories. He was elated. So was I. We celebrated with homemade pasta and danced to an old playlist we used to play in college. He picked me up mid-spin, kissed my forehead, and said, "You brought me back to life." And I whispered, "Stay with me this time." He promised. God, he promised. California was a blur. We moved into a cleaner, newer apartment, still modest, but with working heat and no water leaks. He started buying better clothes, new cologne, even got a gym membership. I noticed him checking himself in the mirror more often. I told myself it was confidence returning. He was happy again, and I thought that meant we were happy. But I was slowly being edged out of his world. At first, it was small. "Just a guys' night," he said. "The team wants to bond," he said. Then came the work trips, the after parties, the endless phone calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to find him texting someone in the bathroom. He said it was work. Always work. Then came the attitude shifts. He started calling my concerns insecurity. He told me I was being too emotional. He'd say, "Do you think I'm cheating just because I'm finally doing better?" I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to be wrong. So, I stayed quiet. I kept cooking. I kept folding his clothes. I kept showing up, pretending we were still in that tiny apartment on the 3rd floor with the broken heater and too many dreams. I told myself it's just a phase. We're just adjusting. But one night, the truth became unbearable. He came home late. Very late. Smelled like perfume I didn't own. Lipstick on his collar, but not mine. He didn't even pretend to hide it. He just walked in, tossed his keys on the table, and said flatly, "Don't start." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, frozen. He looked at me, the woman who held him through death, through bankruptcy, through collapse, and said, "You knew this couldn't last forever. You're not exactly who I pictured beside me at the top." My throat tightened. "What does that mean?" He shrugged. "We're different people now. I've changed." I whispered, "So have I. I just didn't change away from you." But he was already walking to the bedroom. A week later, he told me he was moving forward. He didn't say breaking up. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He didn't say anything that felt like closure. Just, "You should pack by the end of the month." And like that, the man who once cried in my arms like I was his last safe place was now smiling in pictures beside someone else. A woman from work. Younger. Richer family. Pretty. Polished. Effortless. Everything I wasn't. And in every photo, I could see it. That smile. That same smile he once gave me after his first big pitch. That smile he wore when I brought him soup during his flu. That smile I thought belonged to us. He looked like he had it all back. The job. The wealth. The image. The life. And her. And me? I had to disappear quietly, like I never existed. When I left the apartment, it wasn't just my clothes I packed, it was years. Years of holding him up, of choosing him every morning even when he couldn't choose himself. Every dish I bought, every little post-it note I left on the fridge, every piece of our life together. I folded it away. He didn't help me pack. He didn't even stay. He sent a text. "I'm at a work dinner. You'll be fine. You always are." Like that was supposed to be comforting. I stood in the middle of the living room one last time. It felt bigger now. Colder. Like I was never there. Like I had been edited out of the story. No photos. No trace of me. Even the old blanket we used to share was gone, probably burned, or worse, given to her. And then, I did something I never thought I would. I walked into the bedroom. Opened the drawer he thought I didn't know about. And there it was. The tiny velvet box. A ring. I stared at it for minutes. My hands shook. He had never proposed to me, always said timing's not right. But here it was. A ring for someone else. The woman who didn't hold him when he had nothing. The woman who didn't feed him when he couldn't afford groceries. The woman who didn't love him when he didn't love himself. He hadn't just replaced me. He'd upgraded. And he wanted me to disappear quietly. Dignified. Gracious. But I wasn't going to give him that. The next week, I went completely off the grid. I blocked his number. Deleted all photos. Erased our playlists. I didn't cry in front of anyone. Not even myself. I'd already cried everything out the night I found that ring. Instead, I focused on surviving. I moved into a small room in a shared flat. Nothing fancy. The paint was peeling and the heater was loud, but it was mine. I found freelance work, picked up night shifts at a bookstore cafe, and started saving every penny. My friends reached out. Most of them had warned me about him before. They said he's always been charming, but never loyal. But I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to admit I was fooled. That I bet everything on someone who folded the moment he had options. 3 months later, his engagement was public. The announcement hit my screen like a slap. He was smiling again. With that smile that once made me believe we could build empires. The caption? "Found love in the chaos. She gave me peace, purpose, and yes." Peace? Purpose? Was I not peace when I ran to pharmacies at 3 a.m. to get his meds when he couldn't breathe from panic attacks? Was I not purpose when I edited every single proposal that got him back into the game? And that's when it hit me. He was rewriting our story without me in it. He was telling the world that his rise had nothing to do with me. Like I was just a shadow. A phase, a stepping stone. But the real betrayal didn't hit me until I bumped into his colleague at a networking event. I wasn't supposed to be there. I almost didn't go, but something pulled me. She recognized me instantly. Her eyes widened. Wait, you're the ex? The ex. Not the woman who built him. Not the woman who gave years of her life to him. Just the ex. I nodded, forcing a tight smile. Yeah, that's me. She took a slow sip of her drink. Then she leaned in and whispered, You know he used your story in his pitch deck, right? I blinked. What? She laughed lightly. Yeah. He told investors how he came back from losing everything. Said he slept on a floor and worked his way back. Very inspiring. But he never mentioned you. I stood still, the room spinning slightly. She continued, oblivious. Honestly, his story made people cry in that room. Investors ate it up. That's why the funding rolled in. He said he did it all. Alone. Self-made. Self-made. That's when something inside me cracked. It wasn't just that he replaced me. It's that he used me, my love, my sacrifices, my loyalty, as a stepping stone. He sold my pain as inspiration and took credit for surviving it alone. He stole my story and monetized it. I left the party early. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw things. I made tea. And I sat in silence. And I planned. The betrayal wasn't in him choosing someone else. The betrayal was how he erased me. Publicly, completely, ruthlessly. I thought about all the things I had seen him do. The accounts he kept. The passwords I knew. The secrets I helped him bury. The people I had introduced him to. The mistakes I had fixed for him. He thought I was gone. But I was just getting quiet. And quiet is dangerous. Over the next few weeks, I began to stitch myself back together, not to heal, but to sharpen. I watched his company grow from the shadows. I tracked his moves, his hires, his public talks. I smiled when I saw the cracks he didn't think I'd notice. The patterns he repeated. The same arrogance that always led him to self-sabotage. But this time, I wasn't going to stop him. I was going to help. Quietly. Patiently. They say betrayal changes you. They're wrong. Betrayal reveals you. And what I saw in myself after his betrayal was someone far more dangerous than he ever imagined. They say pain changes you. But that's only half the truth. Pain breaks you. Betrayal reassembles you into someone you no longer recognize. After I found out he used our story to raise millions, I couldn't sleep. I'd stare at the ceiling for hours, feeling nothing and everything at the same time. Rage would rise in my throat like acid, and just when I thought it would consume me, numbness would take over again. It wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about erasure. I had been written out of the very story I built with my hands, breath by breath, sacrifice by sacrifice. And the world applauded him for it, called him resilient, visionary, a self-made genius. Self-made? I had stayed up all night formatting his pitches. I had stood beside him in lobbies where we were treated like nobodies. I had read every contract, every rejection letter, every insult. He built that company with my time, my energy, my love. And now he was standing on stage, wearing designer suits and smiling beside her, as if I was just a ghost from a broken past. I realized then, no one was going to remember me, unless I made them remember. But revenge isn't loud. Not the kind that scars. Not the kind that changes the air in a room when your name is mentioned. So I got quiet. I spent my days working odd jobs and my nights studying everything I once ignored: contracts, business law, non-disclosures, tech industry loopholes. I reconnected with old friends, not to gossip, but to learn. People talk when they think you're harmless. And I let them believe that. One night at the cafe, a former intern from his new company came in. She ordered tea, eyes tired, posture collapsed. I struck up a conversation. Within minutes, she was telling me how toxic the culture was at his startup. How he micromanaged every detail but also blamed everyone else when things went wrong. How their last pitch deck was almost entirely copied from another startup. how he made promises to investors that were unstable at best. I listened, smiled, nodded, and then I wrote everything down when she left. My transformation wasn't cinematic. I didn't wake up one day with perfect hair and burning confidence. I still had days where I stared at my phone, tempted to check his social media. Nights where I missed the way his voice sounded when he was still human. But every time I was tempted to break, I opened the folder I had titled Remember. It had screenshots of his lies, emails he thought I deleted, photos he sent me when he was cheating, a picture of the engagement ring he bought while still sleeping in my bed, clips from interviews where he took credit for our product ideas. And beneath all that, a single post-it. He didn't break you. He revealed you. 6 months later, I changed my number. I deleted the old playlists. I got a haircut. Not the kind you get when you're heartbroken, the kind you get when you're about to go to war. I reached out to one of the angel investors who once passed on his idea years ago. The man remembered me, said I was the girl with the better brain. He laughed like it was a compliment. I let him laugh. I pitched him a cleaner, tighter version of what my ex was doing, only better. Smarter. Legally sound. Ethically sharp. Technologically leaner. He was intrigued. Within weeks, I had a small grant, a tiny team, and my own domain name. No press release. No fanfare. Just quiet building, the same way we once started. But this time, I wasn't building for someone else's glory. This time, it was for me. But you know what happens when you start rising from the ashes? The people who set the fire get nervous. He reached out again. Of course he did. A message request popped up one night. Hey, saw what you're building. Impressive. Maybe we can talk? I stared at the message for 20 minutes. I didn't reply. So he tried again. Didn't mean to ghost you back then. Just got overwhelmed. You know how it is. Overwhelmed? That's what he called leaving me without closure? He still had no idea. He still thought I was soft. That I'd melt at attention. That I'd crave his validation. He had no idea the woman he left in that cold apartment was gone. This version of me? She didn't beg. She built. Weeks passed. I kept growing, quietly, but with purpose. I attended pitch events where he wasn't invited. I watched him fake smiles in podcasts while investors quietly began comparing our models. I even found out that his co-founder, the guy I had introduced him to, had been trying to reach me. Apparently, they had a fallout. Something about misused funds and ego clashes. I met him once. He apologized. Said, "You were the real brain." I knew it then. I just didn't speak up. I didn't forgive him. But I took his documents. They were enlightening. My favorite part of revenge? You never have to raise your voice. You just have to raise your standards. He thought he'd destroyed me. He thought he walked out of the ashes cleaner than ever. But you can't build a life on ruins without ghosts following you. And I was the ghost now. One night, I received a private message from a journalist. She was doing a story on fast-rising tech companies and the hidden truth behind them. She'd heard whispers, rumors, misuse of code, inconsistent financials, silent partners, deleted names. She asked me if I wanted to talk. I said yes, but not yet. I needed him to feel safe a little longer, to post a few more celebratory tweets, to plan his wedding, to smile for photos. Because the higher he climbed, the harder he'd fall. I stood in front of the mirror that night, older, sharper, quieter. And I whispered to myself, you weren't erased. You were reborn. Revenge isn't a loud scream in the middle of the night. It's not keys scratched across a luxury car. It's not burning letters or slapping someone in public. Real revenge is silent. It walks slowly. And it waits until you've rebuilt your enemy's world around them, and then lights the match. And that's exactly what I did. By the time his wedding photos went viral, I had already submitted the files. 3 separate documents. one to a federal startup commission, pointing out the fraudulent investor reports, one to a quiet but powerful tech law firm, highlighting stolen code lines and repurposed frameworks, and one to a journalist, the same woman who had messaged me weeks earlier. But I didn't stop there. I hired a small team of coders, mostly fresh grads and freelancers, hungry for opportunity. Together, we replicated the core of what his platform was supposed to be: cleaner interface, ethical backend, transparent roadmap, no stolen slides, no buried credit, no lies. And then, we launched 48 hours before his platform's second funding round was due to close. The silence before a storm is underrated. For 48 hours, I said nothing. I posted nothing. Just a quiet tweet. The version you trusted was built on lies. Here's the version that came from truth. Hash from the ashes. And then, the ripple began. First, it was tech nerds. Then VCs. Then angry ex-employees who finally found their voice. And within 24 hours, the comparison started. Mine was faster, cleaner, and legal. People started asking, wait, wasn't this his original concept? And then the first blog post hit. Then another. And another. I got a call. Unknown number. But I knew exactly who it was. I picked up. All I heard was his breath. Why are you doing this? I smiled quietly to myself. You erased me, remember? I said. So this must be your imagination. You don't know what you're doing, he snapped. I stayed calm. No, I replied. You didn't know who you were destroying. Now you do. He hung up. Over the next few weeks, his downfall wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fireworks and headlines, not at first. It was cracks. Small ones. An investor dropped out. A backend bug went public. A former intern leaked documents about false KPIs. Then came the journalists. The feature article. The podcast episodes titled, "The Startup Star Who Stole His Shine." He went quiet on social media. His fiancée stopped tagging him in posts. And all the while, I kept building, kept hiring, kept rising. But revenge wasn't just about watching him fall. It was about making me visible again, in every room he once tried to keep me out of. I started getting invited to panels. People who once ignored my emails now quoted me in their newsletters. He had built a name on my silence. And now I was speaking, and they were listening. At one conference, I stood backstage waiting to go on. He was there too. We made eye contact for the first time in a year. He didn't look angry. He looked small. He walked up slowly. I get it now, he said softly. You were never just my support. You were the reason it worked. I didn't flinch. No, I replied. I wasn't the reason it worked. I was the only thing that worked. He opened his mouth to say something, maybe an apology, maybe a plea. But I walked past him and stepped on stage. I spoke to a crowd of 2,000 people about resilience, ethics, betrayal, and rebirth. But I didn't mention his name, not even once. Because revenge isn't about reminding them what they did. It's about building a life so undeniable that their name isn't even worth your breath. He lost his biggest investor 3 days later. The investigation into his company went public. His fiancée removed her last name tag from his bio. And me? I signed a deal to expand internationally. Do I forgive him? No. But I thank him. Because had he not left me to break, I would have never realized how powerful I am when I rebuild. And the best part? He will have to live every day watching a version of himself, a better version, standing tall in my name. The press moved on. He disappeared from public view. I kept rising. But there's something no one tells you about revenge. After the fire dies, the silence gets louder. The victory tastes sweet, but it doesn't fill the void he left. Not the man. The version of me that loved him. That version? She didn't make it through the war. Months later, I was invited to speak at a summit in San Francisco. A room filled with innovators, builders, and dreamers, the very kind of people we once used to be. I stood backstage, flipping through my notes. I wasn't nervous. I was ready, polished, composed, until I saw his name on the list of panel attendees. Not as a speaker, just a guest. I didn't know whether to laugh or leave, but I stayed. He didn't approach me the entire day. I saw him standing near the back wall during my keynote. He looked older, not in age, in spirit. He watched silently as I spoke about second chances, accountability, and reclaiming stolen narratives. I ended my speech with one line. Sometimes the people who bury you forget that you're a seed. A standing ovation followed. And still, he said nothing. Until I left the building. He was outside, alone. I didn't come here to ruin your moment, he said quietly. I know, I replied. You couldn't even ruin me when you tried. He winced, but didn't flinch. I deserve that, he said. And more. There was something different about his voice. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't apology either. It was regret. Not the kind you perform. The kind that seeps in slowly after you've destroyed everything you thought made you strong. I lost everything, he said. Not just the money. Not just her. I lost whatever part of me believed I deserved love. I stayed silent. He looked at me with a pain I no longer felt. I don't want anything from you, he said. I just wanted to say it. I was wrong. All of it. I stole your light because I didn't believe I could shine on my own. And now, I see. You were the light. I swallowed hard. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. But for the first time, I saw him, not the version I once built in my head. A man. Broken. Ashamed. Human. And then, the twist came. Not from him. From the journalist. The one who broke his story, the one I fed the truth to. She called me a week later. There's more, she said. You need to know this. She forwarded an email chain. Screenshots. Files. Hidden folders. And suddenly, the story I thought I knew shifted. Turns out, he wasn't the only one who betrayed me. One of my own team members, a guy I trusted during the rebuild, had been feeding inside information to competitors, selling insights from our platform, leaking confidential strategy documents. And the person who tipped off the journalist? Him. The same man I'd taken down. He saw the betrayal before I did, recognized the signs, and instead of using it to hurt me, he exposed it to protect me. I confronted the team member, fired him, secured the leaks, rebuilt the firewalls. But I couldn't ignore the weight in my chest. Why? Would he protect me? I didn't ask. Until he sent one last message. You burned me. I deserved it. But I couldn't watch someone else do the same to you. Not again. Not after I finally saw the woman you really are. I didn't reply. I just stared at the screen. For the first time, not in rage, not in pain, but in understanding. People ask me all the time, do you still hate him? And I always say the same thing. No hate requires space in your heart. He doesn't live there anymore. But that doesn't mean I forget. I remember everything. The silence, the betrayal, the rebuilding, the war. And I remember the lesson buried inside all of it. Never love someone so loudly that they forget you built them in whispers. Today, my name is known. Not because I screamed louder, but because I finally spoke for me. And him? He walks in shadows now. Not because I put him there, but because he chose it. And still, sometimes, on quiet nights, I wonder if he ever misses who he used to be, when he was held by someone who believed in his magic, before he started using it to vanish her. But that's the thing about cold revenge. It doesn't end with justice. It ends when you no longer need it. And as for me, I don't want his apology. I don't want his ruin. I don't want his guilt. I just want the silence. The kind that comes after you've finally been heard.